Yo, what's going on, guys? I'm Sam. As I roll out of bed today, a fresh report on iOS 13 drops, and I have to tell you guys, it's a little insane. We've never seen this much info on, I think, a version of iOS leak at once. And because it comes courtesy of 9 to 5 Mac, these are confirmed. These aren't from unidentified sources, so I feel very confident in telling you pretty much all of this is going to come true. If you're excited for that, you want to hear what's new, drop a like down below. It always helps me out, and hit subscribe so you stay up to date on the latest Apple news. The report begins by talking about dark mode. Yes, for the third or fourth time now from yet another source, we are hearing that dark mode is coming. So if you had any doubt that Apple was maybe gonna just do this to trick us, or they were putting out these leaks for some reason to get us excited, that's not going to be the case. We are without question going to be getting a dark mode in iOS 13, and according to 9 to 5 Mac, it's going to be enabled in settings somewhere, and it's system-wide. So it's not going to be just for a couple of apps. Everything system-wide is going to look dark, and I am so excited to see Apple's take on that. Now, we've also heard on iOS 13 that with Marzipan, which is going to be the ability for developers to make apps for the iPad, but then run them on the Mac, because dark mode is going to be on iOS 13, similar to how it is on the Mac, whenever you're running like a Marzipan iPad app on Mac, whenever you use dark mode on your computer, it's going to have that built-in dark mode from iOS 13 there as well, so the iPad app on your Mac is going to look dark like all your other Mac applications, which is cool. Apple's really focusing on consistency here, and that's good. Where things get very exciting, because we have been looking forward to a beefed up version of iOS on the iPad pretty much forever. We are now hearing that there is going to be windowing on the iPad. And let me show you exactly what I'm talking about here. This is an open source project over on GitHub, and the article directly references this as being similar to how it's going to look and work in iOS 13. Look at this, guys. You're going to be able to use Windows on the iPad. But windowing is going to be more than just cool. It's got a ton of practical application. It is going to be like using macOS on the iPad, because you have Windows on the Mac. That's a pretty core part of any true computer experience, and Apple is said to finally be bringing that to the iPad. This is huge, because I think it's going to transform the iPad into truly what the iPad Pro is said to be. It is going to be a device that professionals could actually work on, rather than just some passion project that Apple has visions of grandeur for. Cards are going to be able to be stacked on top of each other on the iPad, and there'll be a way to, like a depth indicator, to see which one is on top and if there's something hiding behind it. And they can also just be flung away to dismiss. There's not going to be an X button that we know of, because, you know, it's an iPad and it should be optimized for touch interaction. You're just going to be flicking it away off the screen when it's done, which is the most iOS gesture that I've ever heard. Next up, another useful feature coming to the iPad in iOS 13, and hopefully the iPhone as well, is going to be a better way to undo something. It just hit me when I read this article, but on the Mac, on Windows, you can either Command Z or Control Z respectively to undo what you just did. And on the iPhone, again, since the dawn of man, Apple's finally changing things that they have not ever changed on iOS, which leads me to believe more so than ever before, iOS 13 is going to be the biggest upgrade since iOS 7. That's how you shake to undo. That is how you undo anything. And then you can undo typing, but that's annoying. And if you want to do anything in a serious work context, like, could you imagine a film director trying to edit something on an iPad and being like, oh, I took the wrong cutout, let me just physically shake my device around? Like, it's kind of comical when you look at it that way. It makes me question why this hasn't been changed before. We look like a bunch of idiots making mistakes on our phone, and like, it looks like we're physically getting angry. I'm sure that's where it came from, but I don't want to physically be angry. I want to be able to do this. In iOS 13, you will be able to, with 3 fingers, swipe left on your iPad keyboard to undo something, and to swipe right on the iPad keyboard to redo it. I'm hoping that on the iPhone, it's like a swipe left gesture, because that doesn't really do anything, or a swipe right, maybe with 1 or 2 fingers, because I don't want this on my iPhone still. That's very annoying, and I'm going to be really jealous if my iPad has that and my new iPhone doesn't. Now, in Safari on the iPad in iOS 13, we are also getting some new functionality here. I think we've heard it's going to be faster and more efficient for real from Max Weinbach in the past, but we have no idea if any of that's actually going to be true just yet. What we do know is that in this report, 9 to 5 Mac states that the website will automatically request for the desktop version if it detects a mobile version on the iPad. I think for the article references YouTube, for example. If you go to that on the iPad now, sometimes you just get the mobile version. Actually, I know for a fact you get the mobile version, and it's really annoying. Like, if you want to upload a video, there's not really an easy way or clear way to do that in the mobile version, so the iPad will automatically detect hey, this is a popular website on the iPad, you probably don't want the mobile version. Here, take the desktop version without the user having to intervene. Again, it's finally making the iPad Pro feel like the iPad Pro. Font management said to be coming into the iPhone and the iPad in iOS 13. There is going to be a new panel in settings just for fonts, and like on the Mac how you have Font Book, you'll be able to easily, I would assume, import and export fonts to and from your iPhone or iPad on iOS 13. The way to do it in the past required you to install a system profile. To me, profiles have always felt a little bit sketchy, so I think it's going to be nice for people that do graphic design work or a lot of typography work on their mobile device to easily be able to use and manage and touch fonts. The craziest part about this report is the fact that we're only about halfway done, and that's what makes me believe this could sort of be a planned leak, something that Apple didn't unintentionally, have an employee send a 9 to 5 Mac. There's just so much info here. It feels too good to be true, but also 9 to 5 Mac would never share something that they aren't confident in, and they've pretty much never been wrong. So in the Mail app, previously we heard that you would get thread muting, where if you wanted to mute notifications from like your school email group chat, because those are way too prominent. Now we know that on top of that, Apple is working to introduce new category sorting that will happen automatically. So you'd have things like dining emails, travel emails, entertainment or tech or news emails, maybe in the same category. And they'll be searchable, which will be really cool. And finally, bringing the Mail app up to speed with pretty much every other third-party client out there, you're going to be able to have a read later inbox of sorts. So you should hopefully be able to get reminders when you wanted to be reminded about an email, but that's been something that we've had third-party wise, I think for years, since at least 2012 or 2013, and Apple's like, all right, we give in, like, we're just gonna add the feature this year. One of the features that Apple introduced a while back in Pages, Numbers, and Keynote was the ability to easily collaborate with users. I mean, it's something that Google Drive has had since more or less the beginning of Google Drive or Google Docs, and Apple is said to be bringing that collaboration-like functionality to other third-party applications. I guess they would be doing this through an iCloud API of sorts, so they'll be able to like sync it through iCloud, and I guess that's the best way it's going to happen. We don't have any other info just yet though, but better third-party support for multiple people to collaborate on documents is something that I'll probably never use, but maybe you will. Now, jumping back to the iPad, there are even more changes that Apple's planning. Thanks, guys. You're really doing well for us in iOS 13, and it's still about a couple months away. So on the iPad in iOS 13, there are going to be new gestures for easier list selection or group selection. This is wild. I'm very interested to see how this is going to work on iOS, but they say like on macOS, you know how you can drag the cursor and it creates that little square, or I mean, any computer can do that actually. Apple said to be working on similar functionality for iOS 13 on the iPad. So if you have a list of things that you would want to copy, or maybe a group of files, you may be able to just drag and drop with your finger, like select it and then drop it somewhere else. It's going to be weird without a cursor, but I also feel like the finger is the perfect pointing device, and it could make that functionality smooth, like just drag and drop really easily, more so than drag and drop already is implemented on iOS. Now, another reason I'm so confident in this report is the clarity and the detail in this report. These are not like generalized overviews of drag and drop possibly coming. There are specific and cited examples here. Another example is in this paragraph talking about the ability for developers to, quote, use a different style status bar, light or dark, for each side of a split view app, which would prevent issues that currently happen in some apps where the status bar will lack contrast with the background in one side of the split view, and I think the same thing with split view apps running on the Mac, but you should be able to have like a split view divider on those if I believe you're running them side by side. Now, I thought the article was done at this point, and the last paragraph was just going to be like your normal conclusion to wrap up what you talked about, but they drop like 4 or 5 other confirmed features on us. Number 1 is a better volume indicator. We'd heard this previously, but it is now confirmed that if you're tired of this little square being in the middle of your screen all the time, which I know I am because this is incredibly annoying, Apple is said to be addressing that and fixing it for good with iOS 13. Sweet. There's a redesigned reminders app in the works, and here's what we concepted in our iOS 12 concept last year, made by my good friend Andrew Vega. I hope that Apple took inspiration from this, or at least realized, hey, maybe we inspired, I doubt this is true, but I can feel good about this. Maybe I inspired Apple to change the reminders app. For hands-free Siri, when you say, hey Siri, there's going to be better noise rejection if there's like laughter or a lot of noise in the background, so that's going to be cool. Hopefully that just stops happening. Like, I want Siri to understand context so she doesn't just go off every time I say it. Like, don't you know I'm making a video, dude? It's 2019. Come on. There is better bilingual support coming to keyboards and dictation. And finally, to wrap this out, advanced or better in-app printing controls. So taking everything into consideration now, we're hearing everything we heard today on top of a brand new home screen redesign. Focus on the iPad, but also present on the iPhone. A new CarPlay user interface, really no idea how that's going to look. New dynamic wallpapers, faster and more efficient Safari, an updated Files app with more features on the iPad, tabs inside of iPad apps, same app side by side on iPad, new Apple Pencil features, and new emoji. This was the craziest iOS leak that I've ever seen. We have never seen this much info drop at the same time, and I gotta hear your thoughts on this down below. Does this make you excited for the update? And are you looking forward to June 3rd, 2019, when this beta 1 is going to be coming for developers? It is just a couple of months away now, and I have not been this excited for an iOS update in a long time. I have no question in my mind now, iOS 13 will be the biggest update since iOS 7, and I'm so excited to have you guys along for the ride. So of course, hit subscribe in case you haven't already. Drop a like down below if you want to see more like this in the future. That's all for this video. Stay awesome out there. I've been Sam, and I will catch you in the next one.